Giving praise to God, I'm Tony, and welcome to Teaching a Lion to Sing. Good morning, good morning. Tony here again, the face behind the voice. This is another episode of Teaching a Lion to Sing, and you're in the Lion's Den. Today, our guest is G.
Hi, this is G here.
Wave at the folks, G. Did you wave at them already?
Yes.
Great, excellent. Our conversation today is on elder abuse. But before we get too deep, let's ask the question, who are the elderly? By definition, elderly is used to describe persons 65 years of age or older. So what is your definition of elderly? Let me ask you that same question. At what point did old become elderly? When did those people with gray hair have other issues that you never thought about before? Probably because you were too young to understand the issues elderly people were going through. That point when you understood your loved ones weren't immortal, but mortal, and they were going to die. G, your thoughts?
I think that it's kind of hard to distinguish old between elderly. I think it's more of your perception of what you perceive elderly versus old to be. To me, I think old and elderly are the same thing. Old is when a person is 65 years or older. I think elderly is when a person is 65 years or older. But I think people's perception change
Right.
when you begin to see your grandparents or someone begin to get older and get that gray hair and
Right.
unable to do the things
Right.
that they used to do. And I think that's what make people think that, okay, now they're elderly versus
Right.
old. So
That moment of self-reflection.
yeah,
Wow.
like wow, like oh my
Right.
gosh, like they're getting older on me. So, but to me, I think it's more of a perception thing.
Okay. For me, it was witnessing my great-grandmother lying in bed in the back room of my grandparents' home. She never moved on her own. All her hair was white, not gray. She was being taken care of by my grandparents. They did everything for her. They moved her body. They fed her. They did everything. My grandparents were old, but this was different. This is the first time I realized there was a difference between old and elderly. I used to love visiting my grandparents, but I didn't care to go back to that back room. There was an odd smell, and she scared me for some reason. I was young and just didn't understand why she was like that. Any thoughts on that, G?
Yeah, I definitely can relate to that. Being that I had a great grandmother that
Right.
went through that and having to go to her house and
Right.
having that smell and having to go back to that room knowing that you had to go see her,
Right.
but it was just that fear of like, when I go see her, what is she gonna look like?
Right.
Is she gonna be the same? Just really just having that experience. And on the flip side, even with having our parents that are not grandparents that are not at home,
Mm-hmm.
my grandmother was in a nursing home before she passed recently. So just even being scared to just go see them in that state
Right.
and just in general.
Okay. Now I need my viewers and my listeners to take a minute and bring someone special to mind. Put that thought in your head. Someone that's of the past generation that you love or loved. At what point did you realize they weren't immortal? None of us are. At a young age, we don't think about getting old. We don't think about getting sick. We don't even think about dying. Okay, now that you have that person in your mind, good. Unfortunately, the next major event that I went through that defined elderly versus old was watching my parents, those that I thought would live forever. They declined rapidly before my eyes. My mother's decline was especially hard on me. I'm a mama's boy. Watching a parent decline in pain and there's nothing you can do about it is something I wouldn't wish upon anyone. When I was on the force and supervised investigations on elder abuse, it was always someone else's parent, not my own. I could sympathize with the pain associated with the elderly and their family, but until my own parents got ill, I couldn't empathize. It was abuse, but pain is pain, all too real. At some point, you're either elderly or you're going to progress to be elderly. So at some point, we're all going to come across these same discussions, same questions that we're having now.
Yeah.
You got any further thoughts on that, G?
No, I really don't. This is coming a little touchy subject for me, but it I personally haven't had a chance. I have not experienced my parents going through that yet.
Right.
Just my grandparents. So like I can sympathize to a, like you said, to a certain extent.
Right.
But until it's your own, it is a little bit harder to, sympathize. So.
Okay. Before we leave, and we're not leaving yet, I'm going to read a short poem that I wrote to my mother. The day I wrote the poem started like this. We'll read that later, not now. I want you to hold on. But I was at home when my phone rang. That by itself was odd because I don't readily give my number out. And if you know me, you know I don't talk on the phone at all. The phone rang. Something inside of me told me to look at my phone and see who was calling. It was my son. If my children call me, then it's usually important, or they would text me. I just so happened my son was visiting my mom, his grandmother, because I asked my children to visit the grandma because she wasn't doing too good. She had advanced stages of cancer and other ailments. She was bedridden at the point, and the cancer had ravaged her frail little body. I answered, "Hello." My son said, "Dad, she's gone." She passed during his visit. All I could say was, "I'm on my way." As I drove to my parents' home, all I could think is, I hope I never get there. I didn't want to face the reality that I knew was waiting on me when I did. My thought was, somehow, if I never got there, she wouldn't be gone. My next recollection was making my way to her room. As I passed my son, who was standing in the hall just before you entered her room, I noticed his bloodshot, watery eyes, and he said, "Dad, I thought I could hold it together." I entered her room. It was just me and her. I touched her darkened, swollen hand. It was a cold that I had never felt before. I cried like a baby. There was an empty bedroom next to my mother's. I sat in that room in the dark, next to the doorway, watching my family members enter my mom's bedroom and pay their final respects. Thoughts of my mom and what she meant to me filled my head and my heart. Those thoughts inspired me to write the poem that I'm going to read to you. It's called Freedom. Freedom. As a child, you gave me no freedom. You guarded my every move. I couldn't and didn't understand. I thought you were the meanest person on earth, yet I always wanted to be near you. Your words could make me tremble, but I never wanted you to leave me alone. As I grew older, you allowed me the freedom to walk a mile. Just don't run, my son, you would say. You gave me the freedom to laugh, to learn, and cry. As long as your heart stays grounded, my son. Then things changed. I could see it in your eyes. I heard your words, yet your eyes told a different story. A story this grown man couldn't understand. You told me you were okay. You said everything would be all right, and I believed you. You would never lie to me, Mama. Now the truth has come out, well, as much as you care to share, and I feel like a child again. My heart ripped from my chest. A grown man, broken. It's gonna be okay, Mama. As I write these words, I cry, remembering how stubborn you were. Those last few days of watching your body do what your spirit wouldn't do, and just give up. I knew you were suffering. I knew you were scared. I knew, Mama. I knew. You would have never seen me cry like I'm crying right now, Mama. Grown men aren't supposed to cry. Now I realize that freedom I foolishly wanted from you, you could not give. It was always been your nature to hold on. It was your last day, your final resting place, when I finally realized what freedom really was. Sitting in that back room with you as you lay in rest, I was alone and in my thoughts. Freedom was finally given. God had intervened and freed us both. You from your physical pain and me from the emotional. Some people cried. Most were silent. I smiled, Mama. We are free. Come join us again on YouTube and Facebook under Teaching a Lion to Sing.